Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Welcome, friends, to Crime and Punishment. It's been a while. It is the official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA. This is a legal podcast. We talk about law stuff, so please don't kick us off of YouTube or re-shadow ban us on X. Website for this law firm is augustusinvictus.com. That's me, yours truly, the host of this program. I am going to post the links before I forget. So you've got, let's see, episode 93. Been doing this for a couple years now. Emperor Invictus on Twitter. Let's see, I'm going to try to post this viral style in here in the chat. There we go. So all that's done. Let's get into the business. So today we're going to talk about the Antisemitism Awareness Act, which I'm sure you've heard of by now. This was last week that this happened. Let's see. Last Thursday, I think. HR 6090. But before we talk about that, let's talk about what happened a year ago. You might recall that last June, we talked about the U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. So let's review that and the lead up to that. The lead up to that was Ron DeSantis here in Florida. Well, not here in Florida. He flew out of here and went to Israel to sign this new legislation, this combating anti-Semitism legislation. That was April of last year. May of last year, so almost exactly a year ago now. He was then allowed to announce that he's running for president. And then immediately after that, maybe like a week later, the White House issues its U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, which is just one of those things to show you when it comes to Israel, when it comes to anti-Semitism, there's only one party in this country. If you look at the roll call for the bill that just passed, the HR 6090, about 411 votes, I think. 320 of them were yes. 91 of them were no. Means less than a quarter of our representatives actually voted against this amazing bill. And it was mostly, not really a Republican-Democrat thing, because 187 yeses for Republicans, 21 nays. 133 yeses for Democrats, 70 nays. So there were more Democrats than Republicans voting against it, but still, even Republicans were voting against it. But all that being said, the overwhelming support was for the passage of the bill. So the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism, which was issued by the White House last June, that's 4 pillars, if you'll recall. Pillar 1, increase awareness and understanding of anti-Semitism, including its threat to America, and broaden appreciation of Jewish American heritage. In order to fight anti-Semitism, Americans must recognize and understand it. The strategy seeks to increase awareness and education in schools, communities, and the workplace, about both anti-Semitism, including the Holocaust, and Jewish American heritage. And then it talks about what the United States Holocaust Memorial Exam is going to do. Museum. Talks about what the National Endowment for the Humanities is going to do. Talks about what federal agencies will do. And guess what that includes? Incorporating information about anti-Semitism into federal diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility training programs. So instead of DEI in the federal agencies, it's DEIA. Just to let you know that there's no collaboration on any of this whatsoever between the private corporations running the country and the federal government. Lets you know the Department of Labor, the Small Business Administration is getting into anti-Semitism. The Institute of Museum and Library Services, of course. So that's pillar 1. They're going to increase awareness about the threat posed to America by anti-Semitism. And then pillar 2, improve safety and security for Jewish communities. To prevent violence against Jewish communities through accountability, deterrence, and effective responses to attacks, the strategy aims to improve data collection on anti-Semitism, ensure vigorous enforcement of hate crime laws, and increase federal funding for the physical security physical security of Jewish institutions. So then it tells you what all these guys are going to do. The Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, they're going to undertake targeted engagements with the Jewish community to understand and help address their security needs. The White House is going to launch an interagency effort to understand the barriers to reporting hate incidents, eliminate those barriers, and improve criminal justice data reporting. Because clearly, not all instances of anti-Semitism are being recorded. They need to report more of those instances. Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice, again, they disseminated a resource guide for houses of worship and other faith-based institutions to increase security. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Department of Commerce, the Biden-Harris administration, they're calling on Congress to fully fund its fiscal year 24 budget request of $360 million for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. So that's Pillar 2, improving safety and security for Jewish communities. So 1, they're going to increase awareness about the threat posed to America by anti-Semitism. 2, they're going to increase improve security, and safety for Jewish communities. Pillar 3, reverse the normalization of anti-Semitism and counter anti-Semitic discrimination. To address the rise of anti-Semitic speech and intimidation in the public square and especially online, the strategy urges all Americans to speak out against anti-Semitism and calls on Congress and tech platforms to take action to address hate online. The strategy also commits agencies to raise awareness of and fully enforce federal non-discrimination laws, which is what we're getting to here today. It additionally aims to boost digital literacy and civics education and combat growing anti-Semitism in schools and especially on college campuses. So you might be thinking, those of you who have heard of this Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that happened last week, you might be thinking, well, this is just, a push after October 7th, and we've got the Gaza war going on right now, and all this is, to suppress the student riots. No, it's not. This White House document was issued back in June. This has been coming a long time. They're using the Gaza war to push it through now, but this was the agenda. I mean, it's always been the agenda, but it's been explicit since last June. And they typed it all out for you. It's right there. So that's Pillar 3. And part of that explicitly says that the White House is calling on Congress to combat anti-Semitism online, to address hate online, to stifle anti-Semitic speech. That's what this is all about. You cannot criticize them, period. It's what they've been pushing for since last June. It's what they've been pushing for decades, really. And now we're seeing it in this new act that was passed by the House last week. Then it tells you what all these agencies are going to do all over again. The Department of Education will launch an anti-Semitism awareness campaign. How about that? So you might have heard through various political pundits over the past week or so, that the Department of Education is involved in this, that this is about redefining anti-Semitism in the Department of Education. Well, how about that? The White House said back in June that the Department of Education will launch an anti-Semitism awareness campaign. And how about that? This new law is called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. Anyway, this campaign is aimed at raising awareness among educators, students, parents, and school communities about the alarming rise of anti-Semitism and giving them the tools to address it. Again, this well predates October 7th. Federal agencies will raise awareness about and fully enforce federal non-discrimination laws to counter anti-Semitic and related forms of discrimination, as well as promote religious communities' equitable access to government programs and religious accommodations. Then we're talking about HUD, because obviously Jews are discriminated against in urban housing. Department of Agriculture, because there's a huge anti-Semitism problem there. Of course, you've got kosher dietary needs. Department of Health and Human Services, they've got to address kosher dietary needs. The Department of Defense, of course, they will evaluate all existing training to identify any gaps in coverage of anti-Semitic conduct. as a form of prohibited discrimination. And again, the Biden-Harris administration is calling on Congress to do what exactly? To hold social media platforms accountable for spreading hate-fueled violence, including anti-Semitism. Just pause right there. So anti-Semitism is itself hate-fueled violence. The words that you use in anti-Semitic speech, that is violence. You can liken it to this law that was passed by DeSantis in the run-up to this thing right here. This White House national strategy to combat anti-Semitism. Well, the Florida law to combat anti-Semitism was passed 2 months before that, signed in Israel by DeSantis. That too is being sold as, well, this anti-Semitism is violence. It is an act of violence. So they arrested these guys down here for waving flags on an overpass. And of course, our retort was, that's 100% legal. This is obviously an infringement on First Amendment rights. You look at the law itself, it was obviously, it's explicitly passed to prohibit anti-Semitic speech. And what was Representative Randy Fine's response to that? No, this is about intimidation. And as you know, intimidation, that is an act of violence. So any word you speak against the Jews, against Israel, we're about to get into the definition of what that means, but any word you breathe against this protected class is intimidation and therefore an act of violence. And back in June, the Biden-Harris administration was calling on Congress to hold social media platforms accountable for the spread of this violence online. So this didn't exactly come out of the blue, is the point here. And then they're encouraging all online platforms to independently commit to actions such as ensuring that terms of service and community standards explicitly cover anti-Semitism, adopt zero-tolerance standards for hate speech, including anti-Semitism, permanently ban repeat offenders, both personal accounts and extremist websites. So, another event you couldn't possibly have missed, Nick Fuentes is back on Twitter. What the Biden-Harris administration is asking Elon Musk specifically to do is to permanently ban Fuentes because he is an anti-Semite, because there is anti-Semitism going on. Now, I haven't, in this entire program in the past 10 minutes, said a word against Israel or the Jews or anything else, I hope, that falls under the definition of anti-Semitism. This is a legal podcast, not a political one. This is just legal commentary. We're just talking about the law here. But everybody else is going to be permanently banned if the Biden-Harris administration gets its way, because this is violence. This is hate speech. This is anti-Semitism. They're asking Elon Musk to permanently ban these repeat offenders, their accounts and their websites. And it just goes on and on and on. Improve capabilities to stop recommending and de-rank anti-Semitic and other hateful content. So change your algorithms so that all these anti-Semites will be silenced. Pillar 4. So again, let's recap. Pillar 1 is to increase awareness. Pillar 2 is to improve the safety and security of Jewish communities. Pillar 3, reverse the normalization of anti-Semitism and counter anti-Semitic discrimination, which means censor everybody. Everybody in the schools, everybody online, everybody at HUD, everybody in the Department of Agriculture, everybody in the Department of Defense, everybody. Silence them if they say anything anti-Semitic. That's Pillar 3. But they title Pillar 3, Reverse the Normalization of Anti-Semitism. Pillar 4, here we go, the final pillar. Build cross-community solidarity and collective action to counter hate. Here you'll find some surprising organizations getting involved. Organizations, government departments, I guess we should say. Partnerships across diverse communities and faiths provide a foundation to counter anti-Semitism and other forms of hate. They are one of America's greatest strengths. To strengthen the bonds of solidarity and mutual support among Jewish and other communities, the strategy expands the most effective efforts at coalition building against hate and supports efforts to mobilize multi-faith partnerships nationwide. Whatever that means. First department listed is the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. That's right. The President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition will launch a digital campaign to spotlight the importance of cross-community solidarity. Makes total sense, if you ask me. President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, the White House Office of Public Engagement, the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. That actually does make sense. The Department of Veterans Affairs. So those guys are getting involved, all those just listed. So this whole thing, this U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, this was passed back in June. It was issued back in June by the White House. Now, 11 months later, you have H.R. 6090. Let me go to the chat. I know it's early, and it's a Friday. Hey now, LP Reprobus Ave. Shovelhead, top of the morning. What's up, Bruce? So I know it's early and it's a Friday and there's no warning of this program, but I just have to get it done. Today's a bad day. It's been a rough couple weeks here. So, plus a friend of mine earlier this week called me an influencer. That just cut me to the core. Didn't even want to do this program. I still want to be online at all anymore after being called an influencer. That's probably the most hurtful thing anyone's ever called me. And it's the third time that's happened. It's the third time somebody's called me that. I'm literally tallying it on the wall next to me. It's just so spiteful. H.R. 6090. Let's get into this law. An act to provide for the consideration of a definition of anti-Semitism set forth by the Congress? The White House? Who do you think is defining anti-Semitism here? It's no one in our government, not even anyone in our country. Set forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance for the enforcement of federal anti-discrimination laws concerning education programs or activities and other purposes. So to unpack that a little bit, this definition of anti-Semitism is going to be used in our federal anti-discrimination laws, right? So you would think that Congress is going to define this. Like in a statute, for instance, we have a definitions section in almost every law. Every law I can think of, you've got a definitions section, in the statute. It will define what burglary means. It will define what conveyance means. It will define what dwelling means. It will define everything. Everything they are talking about that could be a controversial word, something that lawyers are going to argue about in court, they're going to define it. So you would think that part of the statute, like some smart people in Congress, they're going to, come together and think of a definition. Not in this case. In H.R. 6090, that task is taken up by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So, who are they? You can go to holocaustremembrance.com, and you're going to find a website that is straight out of some dystopian movie, like The Constant Gardener or Michael Clayton or something. Like some evil corporation that has this whitewashed website where they're, a great place, and then it turns out they're doing evil things that nobody knows about. HolocaustRemembrance.com looks like one of those. And if you find out, where did I put that? That's the working definition of anti-Semitism. Long story short, it's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So our structure, our permanent offices, member countries, thank you. So here are just a handful of member countries. Actually, let's just read them all. These are the member countries for this international alliance, right? Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Netherlands, North Macedonia. I did not know there was a South Macedonia. I thought it was just Macedonia. I learned something today. Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, United Kingdom, and the United States of America. So thankfully, I guess we're part of this alliance that's defining anti-Semitism in our own laws, but all these other countries are too, including Israel. Israel has a hand in defining our laws. That has got to stick in your craw. Here's another thing to point out. This definition of anti-Semitism, set forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Just go to the website. It says, working definition of anti-Semitism. In other words, this changes. This is like an academician's arena here. This isn't a definition of anti-Semitism set in stone in the statute. Here's what it is. This statute is saying we're going to go by this organization here, this International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and they're going to change this definition whenever they see fit. So right now, we can read the full text of it. I guess we got to start from the top. There's really just no way to make this a short thing. Let's just start from the top. In the spirit of the Stockholm Declaration that states, quote, with humanity still scarred by anti-Semitism and xenophobia, the international community shares a solemn responsibility to fight those evils, end quote. The Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial called the IHRA plenary in Budapest 2015 to adopt the following working definition of anti-Semitism. On 26 May 2016, the plenary in Bucharest decided to, quote, adopt the following non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism. So here it is. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. May be expressed as hatred toward Jews. In other words, you could have zero malice or hatred in your heart. You could just be pointing it out as a matter of fact. It is still anti-Semitic to do the things we're about to read off here. So anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. That's the definition, the working definition it is, because it could change. To guide IHRA, and I'm telling you, it will change. These academicians never just settle on a definition and say, that is the truth. That is the objective truth. They are always looking to revise everything. To guide IHRA in its work, the following examples may serve as illustrations. And again, this list is certain to expand. Manifestations might include the targeting of the State of Israel, conceived as a Jewish collectivity. However, criticism of Israel similar to that leveled against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism frequently charges Jews with conspiring to harm humanity, and it is often used to blame Jews for, quote, why things go wrong, end quote. It is expressed in speech, writing, visual forms, and action, and employs sinister stereotypes and negative character traits. Contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, and in the religious sphere could, taking into account the overall context, include, but are not limited to. Here are the examples. Calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. I think we can probably agree that's anti-Semitic, right? You're saying you're trying to aid or justify the killing of Jews. Like, okay, if you're, trying to justify the killing or harming of white people, obviously we would all agree that's anti-white racism, right? So this is pretty non-controversial. The controversial part is that this international organization is telling us what our laws mean. That's really the sticking point. That, and it can change at their will. Here's another example. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as collective, such as, especially but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. Might be a little more controversial than the first one, right? The first one, like if you are calling for or aiding in the killing of anybody, an individual, a group, I mean, it could be garbage collectors. It doesn't have to be based on race. If you're doing that, that is illegal already. You don't need to be an anti-Semite for that to be illegal. This one, however, making these claims about a world conspiracy of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, leave aside whether it's true or not. The fact is they are criminalizing speech. Now, they haven't done it yet, of course. That's going to be the retort. Well, we're just defining it for the Department of Education. We're just defining it in terms of making people aware of anti-Semitism. But obviously, that's where this is going. They are going to make it legal for anyone to sue you for making these anti-Semitic statements. They've already made it illegal for you to say an anti-Semitic statement while you are in a fight or while you are doing something. That's a hate crime enhancement. They've been slowly chipping away at the First Amendment for years, for decades. Accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even for acts committed by non-Jews. So if you are to say, well, Bernie Madoff did X, Y, and Z in this Ponzi scheme, and he destroyed all these people's lives, and that's just what Jews do, that is anti-Semitic. That's probably not controversial. Because people do that to white people all the time. Well, look what, Rockefeller. Look what Rockefeller did to all these poor people, these businessmen, these small businesses. He destroyed lives. And that's what white people do. Like, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. Who cares? The point is, they are trying to make that illegal to say. They're trying to say you cannot have a social media account if you say these things. Not about Rockefeller and white people, of course, but about the Jews. Denying the fact, scope, mechanisms, for example, gas chambers, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II. So denying the fact of that genocide, or denying the scope of it. So you could say, as some people have, well, yeah, I don't believe it was 6 million. I believe it was 4 million. And, yeah, they were in horrible conditions, but I don't know about the gas chambers. I mean, maybe they were shooting them in mass graves. That is denying the scope, the officially recognized scope of this genocide. That's anti-Semitism. You can't say that. Whatever is in the Holocaust Museum, whatever is in your textbooks, most importantly, whatever the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance says it is, that's what it is. And to deny that, that is anti-Semitism. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust, can't imagine who would do that. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. Which is interesting because with all these videos of Jewish people saying that they are, in fact, more loyal to Israel, more loyal to Jews worldwide than they are to America, are those Jews guilty of anti-Semitism for proudly stating that fact? There are white people I happen to know a lot of them who are more dedicated and loyal to Europeans as a whole, to white people as a whole, than they are to the United States of America. Are they anti-white for pointing that out? Are they anti-white for saying that about themselves? Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, exempli gratia, by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. So notice, that is exempli gratia. For example, by claiming that the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. That's just one thing you could say. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, that is anti-Semitic. So you don't have to say, as the leftists do, that, well, the state of Israel is a racist thing, and therefore it is illegitimate colonization. You could be anywhere else on the spectrum and say, yeah, this didn't exist until 1948, when these terrorists started murdering, massacring everybody in Palestine, and they created this state of Israel. It's out of pure hatred. That, which I'm not saying, of course, that would be anti-Semitic to say. Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. That is Israel, of course, who, by the way, let's not forget, is one of the member countries of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Let's not forget that. So you're applying double standards by requiring of Israel a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. I wonder, other democratic nations, are they not expected not to carpet bomb civilians and blow up hospitals? Like, I know Americans, specifically Republicans, will try to justify doing that in Afghanistan or Iraq. And back in the Clinton administration, it was cool for Clinton, for the federal government, for the military to blockade Iraq, to starve 500,000 women and children. That was cool. But every other democratic nation was appalled by it. We are all appalled by it. We actually do expect that democratic, or any nation, communist, fascist, monarchies, whatever, you can't do those things. The fact is, though, people point this out about Israel, and so they get upset about it, and they call you anti-Semitic for pointing that out. Whereas if you pointed that out about France doing that in Algeria, well, of course, you're on the right side of history. You're pointing out an evil. But when you point that out about Israel, you're anti-Semitic. Here's everybody's favorite, right? Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, exempli gratia, claims of Jews killing Jesus, or blood libel, to characterize Israel or Israelis. I won't beat this one to death. Matt Walsh actually talked about it at length and did a good job of it. So I just direct you to that. But they're essentially, the New Testament is anti-Semitic under this definition. That's just all there is to it. The New Testament absolutely says the Jews killed Jesus. It's said that for 2,000 years. Everybody knows it. And now it's anti-Semitic to say that. And that's part of our federal statutes. Well, at least it will be. House has passed it. Let's put it that way. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Yeah, I've seen a lot of memes about that. I could see them being upset about that. By them, I mean Israel, not the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. But that's anti-Semitic. You can't do that. So you could make memes of America and compare that to the Nazis. You could make memes about the Chinese and their suppression of free speech in Hong Kong. You compare them to the Nazis. You could make memes about Russia. You compare the Russians to the Nazis, but not the Jews, not Israel. Can't do that. That's the sacred cow. Holding Jews collectively responsible for actions of the state of Israel. So, if people in Israel are carpet bombing civilians and just straight up murdering people all throughout Gaza, you can't blame the Jews in the United States and Europe for that. I think that's generally fair. However, let's not forget, we're talking about a federal statute in the United States of America saying it is illegal for you to say that now. That's really the crux of the matter. They're trying to outlaw the speech of American citizens in America. They've crossed the line. And let me refresh my memory here. 320 of our representatives voted for this. Only 91 voted against. So, short title, going back to, that's basically that is the definition, the working definition of anti-Semitism. Going back to the law here. Short title, this act may be cited as the Anti-Semitic Awareness Act of 2023. Sense of Congress. It is the sense of Congress that, 1, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. So, right off the bat there, this is about the Civil Rights Act. That's how they're pushing this. This is the same way where you can, as an African-American person, you can sue white colonizer and slave owner descendant if they deny you a space in their restaurant, right? Or their hotel, or whatever it's going to be that day. Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's what they're attaching this to. Number 2, while such title does not cover discrimination based solely on religion, individuals who face discrimination based on actual or perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics do not lose protection under such title for also being members of a group that share a common religion. 3. Discrimination against Jews may give rise to a violation of such title when the discrimination is based on race, color, or national origin, which can include discrimination based on actual or perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics. 4. It is the policy of the United States to enforce such title against prohibited forms of discrimination rooted in anti-Semitism as vigorously as against all other forms of discrimination prohibited by such title. And 5. As noted in the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism issued by the White House on May 25, 2023. For those of you late to class today, that's what we opened this program with. The U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism was issued by the White House. The date I have is June 2nd. I don't know where they're getting May 25th. Whatever. In that week period, they issued this U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism based on these 4 pillars. I'm not going to repeat all that because we opened the program with that. But number 5 is, as noted in that piece of work, it is critical to A, they're gonna state the 4 pillars right here. A, increase awareness and understanding of anti-Semitism, including its threat to America. B, improve safety and security for Jewish communities. C, reverse the normalization of anti-Semitism and counter anti-Semitic discrimination. And D, expand communication and collaboration between communities. So again, this didn't come out of the blue, and this isn't because of October 7th. They have been working towards this since last year. Section 3, findings. Congress finds the following. 1. Anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States and is impacting Jewish students in K-12 schools, colleges, and universities. 2. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which we just read through their working definition. The IHRA's working definition of anti-Semitism is a vital tool which helps individuals understand and identify the various manifestations of anti-Semitism. 3. On December 11, 2019, Executive Order 13899 extended protections against discrimination under the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to individuals subjected to anti-Semitism on college and university campuses, and tasked federal agencies to consider the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism when enforcing Title VI of such act. 4. Since 2018, the Department of Education has used the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism when investigating violations of Title VI. So in other words, we've been doing this for the past 6 years already, All we're doing today in Congress is we are codifying it. We're making it law now. 5. The use of alternative definitions of anti-Semitism impairs enforcement efforts by adding multiple standards and may fail to identify many of the modern manifestations of anti-Semitism. So it's messy, it's confusing, we need a solid definition, so we're just going to hand that over to this international body to tell us what to think and tell us what should be censored in our own country. Number 6, sixth finding of Congress, the White House released the first ever United States national strategy to counter anti-Semitism on May 25th, 2023. Again, that's what we opened the program with, making clear that the fight against this hate is a national bipartisan priority that must be successfully conducted through a whole of government and society approach. Some people would call a whole of government and society approach totalitarianism, but not Congress. Section 4, definitions. As I said, every law that I know has a definition section, so this is for this law. For purposes of this act, the term definition of anti-Semitism, 1, means the definition of anti-Semitism adopted on May 26, 2016 by the IHRA, of which the United States is a member, which definition has been adopted by the Department of State, and 2, includes the contemporary examples of anti-Semitism identified in the IHRA definition. Interesting that this bill notes that the United States is a member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, but it doesn't note that Israel is a member of that same international alliance. That would be an inconvenient thing for Americans to see in black and white. Section 5. There's only 6 sections, so we're almost done here. Section 5, Rule of Construction for Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In reviewing, investigating, or deciding whether there has been a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, for the law nerds out there, that's 42 U.S.C. 2000 D et sequitur, on the basis of race, color, or national religion, based on an individual's actual or perceived shared Jewish ancestry or Jewish ethnic characteristics, the Department of Education shall take into consideration the definition of anti-Semitism as part of the department's assessment of whether the practice was motivated by anti-Semitic intent. So a rule of construction, like they're saying, well, what does this statute mean in practice? And they're telling people in the future, this is how we're going to interpret this here. Section 6, final section, other rules of construction. A, general rule of construction, nothing in this act should be construed. 1, to expand the authority of the Secretary of Education. 2, to alter the standards pursuant to which the Department of Education makes a determination that harassing conduct amounts to actionable discrimination. Or 3, to diminish or infringe upon the rights protected under any other provision of law that is in effect at the date of the enactment of this act. And then finally, constitutional protections. Nothing in this act shall be construed to diminish or infringe upon any right protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. What a great closing line. We're going to hand over the definition of anti-Semitism. We're going to let this international body decide what we are and are not allowed to say in schools and on social media elsewhere. Oh, but by the way, nothing in this act should be construed to mean that we're, trying to infringe upon anybody's First Amendment rights. Passed the House of Representatives May 1st, 2024. And then you got the vote. So, this has passed the House. It has not yet passed the Senate, at least not to my knowledge, unless something happened this week I don't know about. But it's passed the House. We'll see when it passes the Senate. Let's go back to the chat. It's really all I wanted to talk about today. All right, well, a lot of people are up early today, especially Robertson. What time is it over there? If you look up the definition, it literally is just a certain perception of Jews. Yeah, IHRA definition, yep. A certain perception which may or may not. Yeah, it is meaningless. You are correct, Adonius. Hey, says Cornelius. Hey, back from the dead, this guy. Good to see you still around. God bless and the work you've been doing for us. Thanks, buddy. From the website, adopt the following non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism. Yeah, well, it's legally binding. Well, Not yet. It hasn't passed. It just passed the House, which is bad enough, but it's not law yet. I should have prefaced this with that. It's not yet law. It's just passed the House. But, I mean, what are the chances that the Senate's actually going to go against this thing? I'd say there's a better chance that Biden's going to refuse to sign this because he's under so much bloody heat right now. But, que sera, sera. Let's see. Make America American again, says Spud Ruckus. What's up, Chris and Ava? Long time no see. So, that's really all I want to talk about today. Go to Emperor Invictus on Twitter. That's where I keep all the news. And I swear, if a fourth person calls me an influencer, this might be the last episode of this program. Anyway, that's pretty much all for today. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Till then, everybody.